Hey guys, how you doing today? It's Barb. Um, Today I want to go over a fairly fresh story with you guys. But first, if you haven't read my disclaimer in the beginning, I do just want to let you know that this has to do with child abuse. If that is something that triggers you in any kind of way, I just want to let you know that you might want to go ahead and sign off the channel. But I'm going to go ahead and get right into the story because it's a little bit of a long one, a little longer than what I usually do. And it's about the Chloe Driver case who she murders her 13-month-old child. But I'm going to go ahead and get into it, and we're going to start with the opening statements in the beginning of the trial. So in opening statements, the prosecution said that Chloe was involved in a polyamorous relationship with Brian Joyce, who was also known by Benjamin Ben Michael, and I am going to refer to him as Ben throughout the story. Anyway, it was her, him, and two other women who were part of this relationship, I'll call it. The group reportedly adhered to extreme views, rejecting modern medicine and following strict dietary lifestyle rules. You're going to hear a lot of distracting evidence about this group, but what your decision is in this case is what happened to Hannah. That is what prosecutors had told the jury. The prosecuting deputy chief assistant district attorney, Katie Grupp, emphasized the brutality of the crime. This is Hannah Nicole Driver on December 8th, 2020. She was 13 months old, and the prosecutor stated while she was holding up the photo of the child, "This is not how you will see her in this trial. Instead, you will see her the way that first responding officers saw her. A beautiful baby girl who had been brutally murdered by her mother, stabbed repeatedly until every bit of life drained out of her." The prosecution cautioned the jury that they would hear about Chloe's involvement in a controversial group with unorthodox beliefs, including strict veganism, sensory deprivation practices, and unconventional healing rituals. Chloe faces several charges, including felony murder. The state's case focuses on proving that Chloe intended to kill her daughter. Defense attorney Angela Trethewey, however, argues that Chloe was mentally unwell at the time of the incident and citing severe psychological stressors allegedly exacerbated by her involvement in the group. The defense's position emphasizes Chloe's mental state, suggesting that she was influenced by manipulation from Ben and his associates, which they contend led her to deteriorated mental health. I am assuming the associates are referring to the other women that was part of the group. There is no dispute as to the facts regarding the events that occurred. Chloe does not dispute that she killed her 13-month-old baby daughter. The only issue in this case is that the jury needs to decide if Chloe's mental status and mental state at the time of the crime. 8 prosecution witnesses testified at trial, and the court heard chilling accounts from law enforcement and emergency responders, as well as details about the events surrounding the child's death. A Canton Police 911 dispatcher was the first witness, recounting the 911 calls that were reported to Hannah's stabbing. Audio of the calls was played in court, with the dispatcher confirming that none of the callers indicated that Chloe herself had been injured. Following the dispatcher, the homeowner of the property on Mountain Vista Boulevard testified. He described his relationship with Ben, a man he referred to as Z, whom we met through a third party, after seeing a video about spiritualism online. The homeowner said Ben and his girlfriend intermittently stayed at his home since 2015, describing Ben as some sort of crazy hippie. Although he was aware of Ben's polyamorous relationship, he stated that he had not observed concerning behavior. Canton police officer Gary Pruitt, who was the first to arrive on the scene, testified about responding to the dispatch call around 2:27 p.m. The call came out as a mother who had killed her baby with a knife. He recounted finding the young child bleeding on a mattress, and jurors were shown body camera footage of his arrival at the home. Officer Pruitt added that Hannah was taken to the hospital by medics, and during cross-examination, he confirmed finding Chloe lying on the floor while baby Hannah was on the mattress and she was holding her hand. Canton police officer Adam Yurkovsky testified that he began the initial investigation by separating the parties involved to prevent them from coordinating their accounts. Paramedic Brooke Ice, an 8-year veteran, testified feeling in danger as she attended to the baby, nearly kneeling on the knife that was believed to be used in the murder. Another paramedic moved the knife, which was on the floor near her. She testified that she was unaware of the identities of those present, heightening her sense of fear. Detective Tom Priest testified next, telling the jury, he says, I was led upstairs to the room where the incident occurred and saw large amounts of blood on the bed and on the floor. I also observed a knife on the floor, and he shared photos from the scene, including an image of Ben, who he said appeared shocked and emotional upon learning of Hannah's death. Cherokee Sheriff Investigator Christopher Shaw testified that he was called by Canton Police to assist with the investigation. Shaw went first to the hospital where he documented the child's injuries, and he described seeing significant blood loss and knife cuts on the child's neck. Chloe became visibly upset at Shaw's detailed the injuries, including the condition of the child's sock, while jurors viewed related photographs. I don't know why somebody would get upset over a sock. He described the crime scene as clear-cut scene and contained to a single bedroom, and noted the knife suspected to be the murder weapon appeared to belong to a set taken from the kitchen. Finally, Commander Lindsay Harris, a digital forensic specialist with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office, testified about her role in unlocking Chloe Driver's cell phone and extracting data. She said her division generated a report with over 800,000 pages of data from the device. I don't even know what 800,000 pages would even look like. That's a lot, just from a cell phone. So we're going to move along to day 2 testimony. The second day of testimony featured statements from Jason Spillers, an acquaintance of Chloe and Ben. Jason said Ben had 3 wives, but he was not in one himself. I do believe that's wrong. I think the whole time that he only had, well, yeah, he had 3 wives, including Chloe. I know what I'm talking about. But he was not against the idea of having multiple wives. He always believed in plurality as well, that men should have multiple women. He said Ben was with Chloe Driver, Jessica Lee Caffigan, and Sarah Stiles, but her chosen Hebrew names were Kuani, Anagamani, and Shelig. He recounted how Ben and his wives were nomadic and how he had gone on several trips with them. He said, I thought it was really interesting because you only see that with religious cults. Jason reported how Chloe had been with Ben the longest and had been together for years before the other women came on board. He observed a very beautiful and healthy relationship between all of them. He said he never saw a petty argument while staying with them in a van during a week in Nokomis, Florida in May 2020. He talked about how every one of them practiced veganism and how he picked it up after meeting Ben. So, he said, I was influenced in a positive way by them and being around them, adding that the diet was not forced, but it was pretty logical. He also said that he, along with others, would also drink their own urine for health reasons, going into great detail about the practice. I know there's other people out there that do that, but to be honest with you, I just find that totally disgusting. I'm sorry. No. Now, Jason, who also talked about dark therapy, where all the windows were blacked out and they would meditate for an extended period of time. I had a neighbor who, I'm going back maybe 6 years. He had, I think, two, I don't know if they were considered girlfriends or wives or whatever, but they also had their windows blacked out. And I don't understand that part of it, blackout therapy, whatever. Do they stay in the dark 24/7 or do they have lights on inside? Because their windows were never open. I mean, their windows were blacked out. They had things nailed to the windows so that they didn't come undone. But I don't understand that whole thing. But anyway, Ben never made them do any of that, adding that the women wanted to seek a higher level of being. He said Ben was the head of the household when it came to his family, believing in a patriarchal family and traditional gender roles. When pressed by prosecutors if that was biblically based, he replied, no, it's just psychologically sound. Men are better leaders and they are better decision makers. They can regulate their emotions in a way that women cannot, and they're just better leaders. I don't believe that. There's plenty of women out there who are very good leaders, and I think men are just threatened by them. I think that's what that is. Still, he insisted that they had the choice to leave, and he said Hannah was always around and became emotional when speaking about the baby's short life. Chloe also showed emotions during this portion of the testimony. Well, I would hope so. The prosecutor then turned her sights on a single person's delusions versus a belief system. Define what is real. Jason challenged the prosecutor when questioned about an alternative reality. There's something greater here that those who are inept choose not to believe or see. I'll agree with that. And what pressed on what the collective group believed, Jason responded, we are not talking about Kuani or She-League. These are women who want to run and laugh and be silly on the beach while me and Ben are sitting here discussing doctorate level perceptions in quantum physics. I don't think they were doing that, but anyway. These type of women don't have these types of conversations with these women. I am not even sure they are capable of that. He added that it was also not the women's role to have those conversations, and Jason and Chloe would phase in and out of delusion. He recalled a time when he had to run her down and coax her to come back from the middle of the road in traffic. Maybe that was a suicidal thing. He described a dramatic shift in her mentality after an encounter with a woman. It started with, I need to protect the baby, adding that he would try to be as gentle and patient as possible with her. Jason testified that he provided CBD oil to Chloe to help her with her moods. Leading up to the baby's death, Chloe discussed moving to Florida with her family and planting a garden and doing some health healing. Now we're going to go on to Hannah's death. They're stating that it was like a massacre in that room. Total blood everywhere. The prosecutor then steered the conversation to the day of Hannah's death. Jason said the group had planned to leave that day, and he had just woke up from a nap. He and two other women were standing in the driveway when he heard Ben scream, just like this terrified, painful scream. A big scream, and it was shocking. He eventually worked his way into the house and up into the room. He said, I entered the room and there was blood everywhere. Ben was trying to give mouth to mouth to Hannah, to the baby. I just went into shock, and basically he described Hannah as making a gurgling sound. He went on to describe Chloe's stab wound, and he described putting pressure on Chloe's wounds using his sweatshirt and his hands. She wanted to see her child one more time, and she said, stop, I'm supposed to die. He said it was like a massacre in there. I can't imagine having to deal with knowing that you lost control of your own mind to the point where you killed your own child. Women don't kill their babies. That's just really rare. No. Back in the day, it might have been rare, but you hear more and more about filicide, and I just don't find that to be a rare thing anymore. I think there's way too much of it. Maybe it seems there's way more to it because we now have the internet opposed to years and years ago. So, I don't know. You can leave me your opinion. Adding that he does not believe that prison is the place for her, Jason broke down in tears during the cross-examination and during questioning by the defense about what type of a mother Chloe was. He said she was an excellent mother and she loved her baby. The defense also discussed Jason's previous assault charge to which he took a plea and other accusations of violence. That doesn't have anything to do with this story, unless they're trying to make him out to be more or less of a, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, um, not dependable. But anyway, I don't know. Now, Chloe's psychological examination. Psychiatrist Dr. Asif testified that there were no illicit substances found in Chloe's system at the time she was admitted for treatment. He also stated Chloe told him, "I wasn't supposed to make it." Chloe would later go on to admit to him that she felt the only way she could get out of the relationship was to take her own life and take the life of her child. He states she told him that this feeling had been growing for some time, and most of his testimony dealt with his going over notes taken during his interviews with Chloe. They revealed how she felt like Ben had been collecting people and she had felt ganged up on and minimalized. She struggled with the ability to leave and felt like she could not leave the situation. Dr. Asif notes that also revealed Chloe had become more paranoid over the last few months while taking the CBD oil. Then why didn't she stop? She is fixated that we are living in hell and we are all actors in a movie and we can rewind. When we die, we don't really die. He said she refused medication and she had also revealed that she had been physically abused for not cooperating with the group. She confided that she met Ben when she was 17 years old and had Hannah shortly a year after. She also revealed she was not allowed to own a car, have a driver's license, or hold a job until they became homeless. Now, Dr. Carley, an emergency room physician, testified that young Hannah was brought in for treatment on December 8th, 2020. Her clothes were bloody and CPR was in progress. He said, "I could see stab wounds on the neck that were no longer bleeding, and there wasn't any apparent sign of life." Yeah, they weren't bleeding anymore because she had already passed away. Dr. Carley said the room was crowded with 3 medical personnel, all attempting to revive the 13-month-old. Unfortunately, after all the attempts to get her heart back beating, it was very clear that that was not going to happen. Adding that shortly after they performed a check of vitals and the time of death was called at 3:10 p.m. So just a little shy of the 1 hour mark when 911 was called. Now, there were other expert witnesses, and the doctor said the wounds were no longer bleeding. She had a lot of blood, adding that her blood was gone. Yeah, she completely bled out. Dr. Laura Darisaw, a pediatric forensic pathologist, also took the stand to discuss Hannah's autopsy. She found multiple stab wounds on the neck, which went far into the child, striking her spine, and she went over every other injury the young girl received. Can you imagine? She was stabbed so far in that her spine was cut. That's a long way in. And if it was a regular kitchen knife, I don't know which kind of knife it was, if it was steak knife or butcher knife. I don't know, but that's still a pretty far way to go into the body. Carolyn, a latent print examiner, testified that no prints were found on the suspected murder weapon, and she said the presence of reddish-brown substance on the knife when she examined it could be the reason no prints were retrieved. Yeah, because there was so much blood on it. She also noted that the material of the knife's handle might have prevented the retrieval of fingerprints. Moving on to day 3. Testimony began with Canton Police Detective Tana Cruz, who was the lead investigator on the case. She discussed collecting 2 cell phones during the search of the house and taking a swab of the inside of Ben's cheek for the purpose of determining Hannah's parentage. Okay. I don't know if that mattered or not to the child's death, if he was the parent or not. I don't know what you guys think about that too. Anyway, DNA evidence was also collected from Chloe's hands, and Tana told jurors she visited Chloe in the hospital where Chloe was unable to speak due to a severe throat injury because she stabbed herself right in the middle of her throat. During this visit, which was recorded and played for jurors, Tana read Chloe her Miranda rights, and Chloe acknowledged them in writing. Chloe, using a pen and paper, immediately wrote 2 questions. Number 1, I want to know who is staying with Hannah. And it was then that Tana informed Chloe that her daughter had died. When she asked if her husband had caused her injuries, Chloe wrote, "He didn't do it, I did. I was going insane and no longer wanted to be with his friends, but kept coming back for him. I only wanted my baby and husband, but he refused." So he, to me, is adding to her depression, delusions, psychological, mental, whatever. During the interview, Chloe repeatedly requested to see her husband, Ben. However, due to COVID-19 restrictions, he was not allowed in the hospital. Tana also informed Chloe that her mother was en route from Knoxville, Tennessee, and the next day Tana returned for a second interview where Chloe encountered, "How long will my prison sentence be for the killing?" A clip for this interview was played for the jury, showing Tana calling Ben for Chloe. When asked if he had seen their daughter, Hannah, and whom they referred to as her Hebrew name, Nim, he replied, "I have not seen our deceased child." Ben then questioned Chloe about why she had committed the October incident. Chloe responded in writing, "It felt safest, and then I felt horrible. I went because I had no choice." She later wrote that she took the knife and was feeling trapped with no alternative, citing certain threats as a factor. So Ben said rather, that you always had a choice. Why did you feel you didn't have a choice? And at one point, Chloe talked about the black marriage being done to her daughter. "Because I could not handle being with the group anymore and left no alternative with certain threats." Ben stated he was unaware of the threats to which Chloe was referring. Chloe accused him of taking their money and not allowing her to just buy land and be with Hannah as long as needed, stating that he had a group to care for, held her responsible for their issues. How the F is it her? Was it her duty? He's the one that chose that lifestyle. He was the one that was responsible for them, not her. He said, "No, you were blaming yourself for everything, and yes, you constantly told me." She responded. The prosecution questioned Tana further about Chloe's personal items. Among the items was a video recorded a month before the incident that was dated November 22nd or 27th, 2020. In it, Chloe stated, "My name is Chloe Driver. It is November 27th, 2020. I am being forced to get in a truck with Ben to see my daughter because he kept her away from me. I don't know where she is, and he won't tell me anything. He kept her with people Tana also testified about several trust and financial accounts that were discovered during the investigation. It was something the defense heavily questioned Tana about in cross-examination. So he didn't know what threats she was talking about. Well, taking your child away from its mother for no apparent reason, that's a threat alone. She could have been afraid she was never going to see her child again. You don't know what he was going to do. Jarrett revealed Chloe also searched for several things on her phone, including 12 tribes community, single woman with baby. What does the Bible say about having more than one wife? Can God forgive me for being with a married man? And last but not least, can God forgive me for harming my husband? Chloe also searched several times about CBD and breastfeeding and CBD oils using for mental illness. She testified that the bottle found at the home in fact contained CBD. Jarrett also testified that Chloe had used an unmonitored line to speak with her husband for an hour. She was supposed to use the line to speak with her mother. Those privileges were taken away after it was discovered. Chloe also used other inmates' PINs to access the phone call system to bypass a block placed on her husband's phone number. And after her testimony, the state then rested. How was she getting other inmates' PIN numbers? Were they willingly giving them to her, or was she being conniving and watching them punch in their own numbers? So the first thing that was mentioned was about a 12 tribes community. I didn't have any knowledge of anything like that, so I'm just going to go over that a little bit with you, information that I found. So while not directly associated with this case, the 12 tribes community has come up a few times during the testimony. The 12 tribes is a religious movement founded in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1972. Founded by Elbert Eugene Spriggs, also known as Yoneg, the group combines Christianity with its own interpretations, emphasizing communal living and self-sustainability. Members live in insular communities, sharing resources and avoiding individual ownership. They operate businesses like Yellow Deli and Mate Factor Cafe to support their lifestyle. The group actively evangelizes through public events and colorful buses, promoting its beliefs about the second coming of Christ and reestablishing the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes has faced allegations of child labor, abuse, and strict authoritarian leadership, drawing criticism for its practices, including rigid discipline and alternative healthcare approaches. Despite controversy, the group maintains a strong sense of identity and operates globally with thousands of members. Okay, so we are now moving on to Chloe's murder trial, day 4. Dr. Garrett testified the driver pled not guilty by reason of insanity, despite being found competent to stand trial. Garrett diagnosed Chloe with schizoaffective disorder, borderline personality disorder, and cannabis use disorder, attributing much of her mental health struggles to a traumatic upbringing, as well as abusive relationships. She had a very unstable childhood. Her family was cold, and she left them multiple times, living with boys and leaving the state to move with another boy. She experienced suicidal ideation early on and engaged in self-harm, including cutting and attempting to overdose on sleeping pills. Chloe's mental health issues were compounded by substance abuse, including experimentation with illicit drugs. They don't state what drugs. Although she was prescribed antidepressants as a teenager, she repeatedly did not take them consistently. Garrett described her as experiencing paranoia, delusions of reference, and manic or hypomanic episodes. Chloe's husband Ben played a pivotal role in her mental state. Chloe described him as charming, intelligent, engaging, but the age gap between them, coupled with her traumatic history, created vulnerabilities. I think he's like 20 years older. She was incredibly isolated. She wasn't allowed to speak to others unless it was for recruitment purposes. Why would she do that when she didn't want to be part of the group anyway? She couldn't go to stores, use money, or have a phone without permission. Her only job lasted about 2 weeks, and those were out of necessity. Garrett testified that Chloe became part of... Sorry, guys. Had a coughing fit coming on. He testified that Chloe became part of a nomadic religious group that was led by her husband. She began questioning the group's teachings after giving birth to Hannah, particularly regarding the lack of prenatal care and a birth certificate and vaccinations. She was concerned that her baby wouldn't have a normal life. Chloe also reportedly endured severe control and punishment within the group, including dark therapy, where she was confined to a bed and denied bathroom access and forced to urinate on herself. Garrett outlined Chloe's mental decompensation in the months leading up to Hannah's death. Now, in September 2020, during Hannah's birthday celebration, Chloe entered a catatonic state. Around the same time, her brother was shot, which she believed she had caused. She became consumed with delusional thoughts, including a belief that photographs could download her back into moments in the past. Chloe's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She tried to leave the group multiple times, and once flagging down a motorist and another time calling her parents on a monitored phone. However, she was coerced back with threats of never seeing her daughter again. See? Garrett testified that Chloe's paranoia and delusions intensified shortly before Hannah's death. I feel outraged by this story of accusations, threats to Chloe, and him denying that, stating that he didn't know what she was talking about. He knew full well what she was talking about. Do me a favor, leave your thoughts or comments down below. I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me a lot. Hit that thumbs up button and that notification bell so you know the next time I upload a video. Till then, guys,